This half hour being brought to you by our good friends at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket, imports, domestics, microbrews, the best selection of beer anywhere. Wine coolers, water, soft drink, snacks. They roast their peanuts fresh and out every day. Pickle bar, led by my two personal favorites, the Barrels and the Dills. Indeed, second to none. Stock up now for a big weekend. At Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. I can part of that big weekend. Ravens and Steelers. Pleased to be joined by Bo Smolka, who covers the Ravens. Bo, welcome back. Great to have you with us.
Hi, good talking to you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it should be pointed out, Eric DaCosta, just so you know, his daughter is in my class. So,
Oh, that's right. She's up at Penn State. That's right.
And she's a terrific student. I mean, really good. All right, so let's start with this. The Kyle Hamilton situation. Where, to your knowledge, does it stand right now with him? Because I think he's one of the top 15 defenders in the league.
Oh, I agree with that. I just got off the practice field. He's out there today, which honestly surprised me a little bit. He is a tough dude. Mm-hmm. I think he's the kind of guy that's going to want to play, and you're going to have to kind of tie him down to keep him from playing. A week ago, I didn't think he was going to play this Sunday. Seeing him out here now, and we're not allowed to watch all of practice, but right. The fact that he's out there trying tells me he's going to give it a go. I suspect the Ravens will call him questionable. I think he'll be listed as limited on the injury report. I think he'll be questionable for the game. I think they're going to try to have him out there to some extent. He's probably not going to be 100%, but I think 70% Kyle Hamilton's better than some of the other options. So if I'm the Ravens, I'm encouraged by seeing him out there today. He won't be 100%, I don't think, but that's the latest.
All right, so Kyle Hamilton is a player. When you're 6'2", or excuse me, I think he's 6'4", 6'4", have some speed, you can play him deep, you can play him in the box, and he knows how to play the game. He's not just an athlete running around out there. He can play. You see him all the time, Bo. How special is this guy?
I think he's terrific. And, I know people talk about playing him deep. I've thought for 2 years now, I think they're a much better team when he plays near the line of scrimmage.
Yep.
They'll use him as like a dime linebacker. They'll play him as a slot defender. He is extremely good at doing things like diagnosing and breaking up these bubble screens and these jet sweeps, because he'll break a tackle or he'll get off a block. You try to block him at the line of scrimmage, it doesn't work, and then he's a very physical tackler. So time and again, you see these bubble screens set up to the outside, and he breaks his block and just blows up the play. I just think they're a better team with him playing near the line of scrimmage. He's also a rangy defender, like you said. He's 6'4" and he can cover. They use him all over the field, and so. But in my mind, they're better when he plays near the line of scrimmage. He's a terrific talent.
Right. No, I agree. How have you felt about the Ravens' pass rush to this point of the season, Bo?
Well, it's been fair. I mean, everything about this defense has been fair at best.
Which is a surprise.
The pass defense has been a mess all year. The pass rush at times has looked okay, and at times it's kind of not gotten home. And if they're not getting there, and these quarterbacks are having time against this secondary, that's a problem. The edge rusher guys have been okay at times. Kyle Van Noy flashed a lot early in the year. He's kind of fallen off lately. Your guy Odafe Oweh has had his moments, and then he's not there sometimes. It's been inconsistent from that group. In the interior, you got now he's called Nnamdi Madubuike, who is a really good interior defensive line pass rusher, and he had 3 sacks against Cincinnati. He had a big impact on that game. They've got another interior guy named Travis Jones, who's just like an absolute bulldozer inside. He's good against the run, but he's good pressing the pocket as well. I think those two interior guys can be a big factor in the pass rush. The traditional edge rush guys, like I said, I would overall say they've been inconsistent.
Okay, let me ask you about Roquan Smith. It's a huge acquisition when they got him, right? How's he played? Has he been all right? Has he been good? Has he been not quite as expected? Your thoughts?
Last year, I thought he was better than they could have expected. I think it was terrific last year. I think he's regressed a little bit this year. He doesn't seem as active to the ball. I don't know what it is. He seems a touch slower to me, and I think others have agreed with that. I'll say this. He's still a very physical player. To my mind, more often this year, I have seen him kind of on his feet, standing at the end of the play when there's a pile on the ground, than actually in the pile where he always used to be. I don't know if he's getting pushed by blockers better than he was last year. He has been less of a player this year than last year. He was great. When they traded for him, he was everything they could have hoped he would be. And so it turned out to look like a great midseason trade for the Ravens 2 years ago. He was a consistently strong player last year. I haven't seen quite that from him this year. I think he's taken a step back.
Okay, so now I'll balance this. I'll get the Lamar in the offense in a moment, but now let's balance this out. They have to face a Russell Wilson quarterbacked Steeler team. How different are they because Wilson is now the quarterback, and what problems can that present for the Ravens?
Well, I think it's going to be really interesting because I haven't seen a lot of the Steelers. I watched their game with Washington last week, and I mean, he's obviously a talent guy. The Ravens are saying all the right things about him. He'll take his deep shots, and the Ravens better cover. And if you saw anything with the Bengals, they did not cover Jamar Chase deep at all in that game. So they better cover, and they better tackle when those guys catch the ball deep. To me, the interesting thing is when I look at these kind of charts that show where Russell Wilson has thrown the ball, he hasn't thrown a lot over the middle of the field.
No.
And the middle of the field has killed the Ravens this year. Middle linebacker depth and at the safety depth, they have just gotten killed in the middle of the field. And John Harbaugh said as much. He said fixing that is their number one priority. I think it's going to be fascinating to see if the Steelers dial up some ways to exploit that, whether that's Freiermuth, whether it's pass patterns with the receivers. The Ravens have been a mess in the middle of the field this year. So you've got to cover deep, obviously. You got to keep your eye on Pickens, and you can't let him get behind you or get open in the middle. But I think the middle of the field is where the Ravens have really, really suffered this year. And it's going to be interesting to see if the Steelers try to attack it that way, which is, from what I can tell, not exactly what they've done.
All right, so now on offense, Derrick Henry, has he been what you thought he would be?
He's been everything I think they thought he would be. I'll say this. I've covered this team for 15 years now, and, I mean, I'm around these guys a lot. He is the most physically imposing, impressive human being I think I've ever seen. I mean, he's an absolute physical freak. Yeah. He's like 260 pounds with like 0.00 body fat and runs he's incredible. And the thing about him, at his age, everyone thought he was going to be wearing down, and he just hasn't shown it. I think he's a great fit for this offense. Eric DeCosta actually tried to trade for him at the deadline last year, and they never pulled it off. They signed him this offseason, and the question was, look, they looked at his stats the last couple of years and said, well, his yards per carry is going down. He's 30 years old. He's had so many carries. He's going to hit that wall. And he might sometime, but he hasn't yet. And he has been everything they could have hoped for this offense. I think his game has improved or has taken a kick up because he's playing with Lamar Jackson, and teams aren't keen on him as a one-back guy in this backfield because you have to worry about Lamar Jackson running. He's got a Pro Bowl fullback blocking in front of him and Patrick Ricard. And the thing that he's done his whole career is he just gets stronger as the game goes on. And that comes back to his conditioning, I think. But you see these games where you unleash him in the fourth quarter when the defense has been on the field for 68 snaps already, and that's when he pops the 55-yard run. He did it against Cincinnati in the game they won in overtime at Cincinnati. He's done it in 3 or 4 different games. So he's been, for what they want to do on offense, and with Lamar Jackson as this running threat at quarterback, and the way that they like to win on the ground, he's been everything they could have hoped for.
Zay Flowers. Look, there are some young players that could have gone through the AFC Championship game like he did last year, and it would have affected them for a while. What does it tell us about Zay Flowers that he's had the kind of season he's had to this point?
Yeah, he made that fumble at the goal line is the one you're referencing in the game against the Chiefs, and I mean everyone here has said from the time they drafted him, the guy's got a good head on his shoulders and he is who he is. I don't think they ever worried about that. And to your point, it hasn't happened. He's the same guy, and to say he's a really dangerous receiver. He's really shifty. He'll catch a 6-yard pass and make 6 people miss and turn it into a 35-yard touchdown. He can do that. He and Lamar Jackson have this kind of thing going. They're very much in sync together. So he's been very consistent. We were not joking really, we were observing that in that game at Pittsburgh last year when the Ravens dropped so many passes and lost the game, right. Flowers was one of them. He dropped a couple open balls in that game. One of them he tripped on the turf and was wide open and couldn't handle it. So they all had a kind of a rough day that day in Pittsburgh last year, but Flowers is terrific that way. He'll catch the short one and make defenders miss. Very, very difficult to get down after the catch. But in terms of kind of bouncing back from that end zone fumble in the AFC Championship game, I don't think the team ever had any worry about him doing that. And he said he was going to turn the page on it. We talked to him the next day, and he has. And he's that kind of player, and he's a huge part of what they want to do on offense.
Yeah, it's one thing to say it. It's another thing to do it. And you know what? He's doing it. I mean, that's to me, it's always the proof is in the pudding. Everybody always says they're going to turn the page. No, I can put it.
That's totally fair, and he has. He has.
And that's where I give him all the credit in the world. He's like, yeah, I'm going to turn the page. Okay. And, well, we're more than halfway through this season. The guy is a terrific, terrific receiver. What has Mark Andrews' presence meant? Because, look, his presence wasn't there all last year. What's it meant this year?
Well, it wasn't there the first part of this year either, and that's what people were surprised about. The first 4 or 5 games, he was kind of a non-factor, and everyone's going, what's wrong with Andrews? What's wrong with Andrews? I don't know if he was still fully back from the injury at the beginning of the year, and I don't know if you guys heard around here, but he was involved in this kind of scary auto crash during training camp on the way to the facility one day, and he was fine. They said he walked away from it and everything was fine, but that might have affected him too. He might have been more physically banged up by that than they let on early. I don't know, but he was not a factor early in the year. But he is also the guy that Lamar Jackson trusts. Zay Flowers has moved up there, but Mark Andrews is a guy that Lamar Jackson implicitly trusts. They came into the league together as rookies. They've been 1 and 1A together in the passing game their whole time here. And when they need a big play, Andrews is often the guy he looks for. Having said that, Isaiah Likely has turned into this really good pass-receiving tight end as well, and that makes them harder to defend. But Andrews is always a guy that on like 3rd and 5, that's a guy that Jackson's going to be looking for.
Is this the longest you've ever gone in an interview without being asked about Lamar?
Probably, to be honest with you. But you got to work your way there, I guess.
And I am working my way there because you know what? And there's a reason for that. I wanted to get a lot of other people in there that have been important to the Ravens' success, then get to him last, because that way people hear about the success of the others first. That's why I'll do these things in patterns like that. And that's now we get to him. You've seen the spectacular from him over and over again. Is this just a continuation of the spectacular, or is there some things that he's doing now that's even better than what you've seen the last 3-4 years?
I mean, the thing with him is, as you said, I mean, any single play can turn into the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen. And we've seen it a lot. I mean, the game the other night against Cincinnati, or I think it was Cincinnati again, where he's back at the 30-yard line, or the first game at Cincinnati. He's going to be sacked at the 30. He stiff arms a defensive lineman, wiggles away, and throws a touchdown. He shouldn't be able to do that. Right. And the other one, he down the sideline and almost scores. It's just so fun with him that way. I'll say one thing that's really improved from him, I think, is the decision making. And he's only thrown 2 interceptions this year, 24 touchdowns, just 2 interceptions. And both interceptions actually went off the hands of his receiver and probably shouldn't have been interceptions. He's done a better job of not forcing a throw. He's done a better job of unloading the ball, and meaning getting it out of bounds and not trying to make a hero play when there's not one there to be had. So that taking care of the ball is a huge part of it. That's one reason why his passer rating is the best in the league right now, because he's not turning the ball over. He's still a very dangerous runner. He's connecting better on the deep ball than he had in the past. He still doesn't throw a ton of them, but he's throwing it better. He's using more of the field better than he has in the past. He's handling the blitzes better, and that goes also back to making good decisions. So it's probably all related. He's also in his 6th or 7th year, and he said before, it feels it's more mature for him now. It feels different. It feels slower. Everything looks, I want to say easy, but he diagnoses it better. It's just everything about it being a 7th year versus a 1st, 2nd year, trying to do too much. But I think the decision making and avoiding turnovers and just making the right kind of read and the right decision in the moment has been a big part of it. And he's got good players. I mean, you mentioned Zay Flowers has been a really good player. Andrews and Isaiah Likely are 2 really good tight ends. And now he's got Derrick Henry that also keeps defenses honest. Because let's face it, if you have Derrick Henry in the backfield and your play action game changes completely because those safeties and linebackers, they have to be ready for Derrick Henry running the ball. And if you can sell that just half a second, that Henry's going to be running the ball, here comes the linebackers toward the line of scrimmage, and there you go, Rashad Bateman is wide open over the middle where the linebacker used to be. And not only that, but this year Jackson is hitting that guy in stride, right, and he's getting yardage after the catch instead of a ball that maybe is thrown behind him a little bit and disruptive. So that's the other thing. He's making the right passes to the right spot after the right decision. And I'm not saying he'll do that Sunday because this Steelers defense has bothered him, but he's done that consistently this year.
This is why I give him a lot of credit, because I give him a lot of credit for a lot of things. But they asked him about the Steeler issues over the years, and he says, I don't know. Well, that's a really honest answer. Like, I don't know. I mean, the only thing I can think of, Bo, is because they play him all the time. See, against the end, they have one loss against an NFC team since he's been there.
That's right. He's 23-1 in his career against the NFC.
That was the Giants game where Saquon did the hook slide at the 3-yard line to close it out. But they only see him once every 4 years. So how do you get ready for somebody you don't really know? The Steelers at least know him, because I think with him, as crazy as it sounds, the way he moves, but if you can take the right angles on him, you can play him. And somehow the Steelers, I think, have figured out, quote, what angles to take against him and when to get him to throw it instead of run it. That's the only guess, and it's a guess on my part as to why.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because he's missed several games against the Steelers for whatever reason. He's only started 4 of them, and he's missed a couple for injury. The one year he was hurt and missed both of them at the end of the year. He missed the 1 year when he had the COVID, and we played the game there on a Wednesday in December with all the replacement players. He missed one when they held him out for the playoffs, the last game of the season. So he's only started 4 games against them. I wrote this up earlier this week. He's 1-3 against them. The only other team he's got a worse record for is against the Chiefs. And his passer rating against the Steelers is worse than any team. So what's happening? Well, he's thrown some interceptions. Spillane picked them off on a pick 6 here a few years ago in one of the first plays of the game. And the pressure. The Steelers have sacked him 20 times in those 4 games. One of them they sacked him 7 times. So that's disrupted their offense. I think the pass rush, the pressure has been a consistent factor, obviously, for Pittsburgh. And Jackson and the passing game just hasn't handled it really well. A lot of teams don't. And that's been one of the things that's been a big factor, I think, in his play against Pittsburgh. And then last year, like I said, they just dropped balls. I mean, they just dropped passes. Andrews and Bateman dropped touchdowns on back-to-back plays. Aguilar had a ball go through his hands. It was just one of those weird days. And you might remember the game a few years ago. The Ravens had a chance to win. Harbaugh goes for 2, and Andrews passed the 2-point conversion to Andrews is incomplete at the goal line. Right. But I think the pressure has been one of the biggest things. I think that Steelers' pressure has really been able to disrupt him. But again, he's only started 4 of the games against him, which is interesting.
Bo, terrific. Really enjoyed it. Thanks so much for the time, the analysis, the insight.
All right, you bet. Thank you for having me. Have a good day.
You too. Bo Smolka joining us on the show today, brought to you by good friends at Brewers Outlet. Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Stock up for the weekend now. Imports, domestics, microbrews, the best selection of beer anywhere. Wine coolers, water, soft drinks, snacks. They roast their peanuts fresh and out every day. 6 great flavors of slushies. Pickle bar led by the barrels and the dills. Indeed, second to none here on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Mark, welcome to the show. Always great to have you with us.
Appreciate it, Steve. You got me a little fired up listening to the highlights. I didn't get to hear them this weekend, so that was phenomenal.
Oh, well, thank you. Appreciate that. Somebody had to say words, so it was me. All right. Mark, you watch the performance. At this point, it's all the cream of the crop. Boise State's really good. Why was Penn State better?
Tom Allen was absolutely just so illuminating after the game in talking about the defensive performance and plan that they had for Ashton Genty. It's not that there was not respect for him as a player. I think they went into that game maybe elevating him to a level, to almost to a vaunted level, to the point where they're saying, Tom Allen said after the game, we want to swarm him. This is the best running back. You said it. This is the best running back we're going to see in years. He has to be swarmed. They tailored a defensive game plan around him, and it was out of respect. But I think there was also a sense of, disrespect probably goes too far, but there was a sense of maybe a little jaw-jutting on both sides of the football, I think, for Penn State. Defensively, saying, why, we've got a pretty good defense. Why would it be so surprising if we could shut down the Heisman Trophy runner-up? And offensively, Jaywan Sider said it. We think we got pretty good running backs, too. And if either one of these guys got 30 carries a game like Ashton Genty would, you'd probably be talking about them like Ashton Genty. So I think the game plan being centered on him from both sides of the ball, to me, was one of the more interesting elements of that game, that post game, and then they just executed it about as well as you could for the most part, and in doing so, especially defensively, being able to do so with Abdul Carter playing, I think, about 18 snaps before he had to go out, and then you just have to shift on a dime to what Tom Allen called their plan B on defense, which included, you saw Vanover, Smith Gilbert, Max Granville, Dom DeLuca, and then changing roles a little bit, adjusting. The adjustment there, I think that pivot was so important. The way they were able to pivot without Abdul Carter and still for the most part, control Genty.
Well, they've already had to make one major pivot this season. That was because of KJ Winston.
Right.
Because they went 8.5 months planning a certain way to play, and 5 quarters into the season they had to change it. So what does that tell you about the adaptability and the minds on the defensive side that they can make adjustments like that?
Yeah, those are two really unique situations, because you're adapting KJ. The loss of KJ is long term.
Yes,
you have to readjust your defense, the way Jalen Reed plays, the way Zachy Wheatley plays, behind them the linebackers, how you're going to play them. Dr. Luca becomes a bigger presence, and he's got to take on a larger role, and has done so exceptionally well. In this case, this was a really micro and really acute and really quick pivot, because they had Abdul Carter as he was on Ashton Genty duty, essentially. And Tom Allen kind of framed it that way. So we wanted him close to the line of scrimmage. We wanted him close to the ball. He had to be around the ball a lot. And then you lose that. And you lose the player who's best capable of performing that role on your defense. The quick pivot that they did this time kind of in a way mirrored what they did with Winston, but they had to do it so rapid fire. And to be able to get that, I think, was really impressive. That, Abdul was off the field for the touchdown drive when the fullback went in and scored. But after that, they did settle in. They gave away some passing yards, tight end catches, that sort of thing. I think Matt's on about 300. Felt like they were willingly, giving those yards up just so they knew that Genty was not going to bounce off anything, and that was one of the That was one of the great things. To me, the defensive play that really woke my eyes to this game and what they were capable of doing, I think it was the first carry of the second series when Denai Dennis-Sutton basically got back points by just throwing Genty to the ground, and that was eye-opening. This is a defense that has come with a plan and a mission.
Right. Somebody had called into the pregame show, and there was a lot about, and they were asking about Genty, and justifiably so, right? And I finally said, you know what? Let's stop this right here. I said, Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton are not chopped liver on the other side. I want to talk about Allen first. I thought, and you didn't get a chance to see it, Mark, but in Monday's practice, Jack and I looked at it and said, he looks exceptionally quick. What was your thought on watching Katron Allen on the biggest stage of his career do what he did?
He was exceptionally quick. He was as fast as I've seen him make some cuts. There was, I think, maybe his first carry, one of a very early carry, got outside with maybe a 10 or 11 yard play. And there was a burst that had a little bit of Singleton in it. You know, just that little bit of hop that you thought, wow, he looks like he's got a step. And then it kept getting better, you know, just better and better from that. But he was just gashing 8 yards a carry. One of his more underrated plays was, you know, the offense had a rough second quarter and some penalties, and Drew, there was a stretch of, I think, 7 straight incompletions. He got sacked, and then they had the busted play touchdown that Boise State, the 58-yarder.
Right.
The first play of the next drive, I think it was first down they ran, and I think Katron picked up 9, and that was a jump start, and that led to Drew's big conversion. The big rushing conversion on third down, then with the defensive holding, and then the second touchdown to Tyler Warren. He was such, Katron he seemed to be a jump start, like a kickstart to everything. Mm-hmm. And he just kept moving the offense in the direction that they wanted to go. And that seemed to kind of like, be the stepladder that Nick got on at the end.
Yeah, I was going to say, because at the end he'd been the guy that had been sort of bottled up all night, and then when he broke it, I mean, Mark, you and I both know that's the home run hitter he is. That's his longest run from scrimmage this season. Mm-hmm. And the irony of it is if you watch the play,
the interesting thing to me, I didn't get the yardage. I think because we were on our corner of the end, it was hard to see. Katron broke one too. I thought it was 50.
Yeah, it was.
But I don't know the exact yardage of the one that came back too. I mean, he was going to be close to 200 yards,
right,
without breaking the big one too. And Jaywan Sider he kind of lamented that, because he said, Nick got his big one tonight. Nick got the big one in the Rose Bowl. Going back to 19, Journey Brown got the big one again in the Cotton Bowl. Yeah. And he said, I wish Nick could have had that, because that would have been kind of his signature moment. Katron. Maybe. And I don't know if Katron is necessarily the signature moment kind of running back, but he just does so much consistently well. And, I mean, you can't ask for much more of him in the postseason. He's got 328 yards in 3 postseason games. He has been outrageously good at the best time of the year.
Right, which is exactly what they needed. Warren makes 2 terrific catches in the game for touchdowns. And then Evans... Look, if you had to pick a guy that can take the top off on this team, it's Evans. The fact that they were both so involved in what happened out there, what does that give in terms of the offensive versatility for this team? Because Warren's been the given all year.
They need something else besides Tyler Warren. And it was interesting that there were not many targets in that game. I think it was 4 players. Mm-hmm. Got targeted for touches and for receiving touches. Warren, Wallace, Evans, and Luke Reynolds. They didn't throw to the backs. Right. Really didn't throw to much of anybody else. It was half the targets went to Tyler Warren. Mm-hmm. So if you know that going in, there needs to be somebody else who can make those plays. And for Omari, to be the player that he can be. He's got that. He's got the 40-yard, 50-yard downfield race catch in his wheelhouse.
Yeah.
He just has to hit that. I mean, getting that for the touchdown, that's the kind of play that opposing defensive coordinators, the next two, next one or two, whoever, however many they play and whoever they see, has to look at number 5 and say, if this kid's racing downfield, we got to get a body on him. And safety has to be there something, because he can stretch us out, and that's a big problem. And that gives you Tyler Warren underneath. And then maybe, like I said, there were no touches for Liam Cliff or Julian Fleming in this game. If you forget about them, who knows? I mean, I don't know if USC forgot about Julian Fleming a couple of months ago. Feels like a couple of years ago now. Yep. But Penn State's not here without his 2 fourth-down catches against USC on that last drive. Mm-hmm. That's where getting people involved, they don't have to be involved necessarily every week, but I think it was really important to see Omari there. It might not have to be Omari on January 9th. Maybe it's Liam, maybe it's Julian, Trey. Maybe it is Omari again. Doesn't matter. But there needs to be somebody else with Tyler Warren.
This is a grind. All right.
It's a grind for us. I can't imagine what it's like for them.
Right. Well, I'm saying that's why, when you talk with a reporter understands, like, from their job, the grind of it, which then gives at least people perspective on the grind it is for the players and for the teams. How important has it been that this has been James' program that is from day one starting in Ireland 1-0, and at this time of the year in this grind, it is heavily emphasized that it is still 1-0.
If you don't do that for 11 years, then I don't think you're able to get kids to buy into it consistently year after year. What I mean by that is James has made that kind of the bedrock, the foundation of the program. Right. And even though it might come across as just lip service to outside people and coach speak, and every coach has their own terminology for 1-0. If you don't live it, then you can lose games like that. You can lose games that you're not supposed to lose. That was one of the really interesting things. Let's talk to at the media day, and then some coaches and players. I wish I could remember. There was one player I asked, "How hard is it to?" I think it was Devon J. Thomas. It was like, "How hard is it to do this? How hard is it to live 1-0?" And he said, "It's not easy because it's a monotonous schedule, and we like to get out of our routines, right? Like we're here in Arizona, I wanted to play golf, get out of my routine, eat Mexican food, right? Sure. That kind of thing. But they have such a routine that they live by that becomes embedded and just innate to them. And that's part of the reason you're 31-5 in regular season games over the last 3 years, losing just to Ohio State and Michigan. If you're not 1-0 mentality, and if you're not 1-0 program convictions, that 31-5 becomes 28-8 because you've lost to Minnesota or you've lost to Wisconsin, or you let a stray get away. And in 12-team playoff world, you can't let stray games get away. They haven't done it, and that's why they're here. In 12-team playoff world, when you got to play an extra game than other people or other teams might play, you can't let those 2 games get away.
Right.
Penn State can be, Penn State can be told, or it can be said about Penn State that they had the easier path than Oregon, ostensibly. Mm-hmm. That may be so with seeding and teams, but Penn State had to play 2 games. That's still difficult to do. You still have to win those 2 games to get here. But from the outside, if you look at brands and names and things like that, if you do that inside, you lose the game, and then you get people even angrier. So doing that so consistently, so monotonously, has got to be so difficult to me. But it's it's incredibly rewarding when you got confetti falling on your head.
There's no question about that. also the fact that they have been spending their time practicing here, and they've been going to the bowl sites a couple of days ahead of time. What do you think it's helped? Just that they can stay here, spend time in their own bed, and not have to, and not go around hotels and so forth. I mean, do you think that's helped at all?
I think so, because it turns it into a road game.
Yeah.
And there's an ethos. There's a completely different ethos between bowl games and road games. They're playing bowl games right now. The whole concept of the bowl game in past is as the reward game.
Yeah.
I mean, Joe Paterno used to take teams down before Christmas to bowl sites and spend almost 10 days, 2 weeks in Florida. I've had players tell me, God, we couldn't wait to leave Florida because we were down there for so long. But this is, these playoff games are not necessarily, they're not rewards for good seasons in terms of a trip. They're rewards for good seasons in terms of winning a national championship. So it's really important. And the players, I think, probably pivoted really easily to this. Maybe the coaches and staff, it might have been harder because you have the concept of what a bowl game is and what a bowl trip is. I think just for the players, they talked about it like going to USC. They really did, that the mindset was exactly the same. So older players have more bowl experience, so they probably had to do a little bit more mind training in this. But I think for the younger players, this is just they're playing road games.
I mean, Mark, it's interesting you mentioned that. James talked to the players about it being a business trip, and he said the message was mostly for the older players because the younger players don't know any better than what they're doing right now.
Right.
So, I mean, I thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Mark?
Hey, and appreciate it. Thanks.
Oh, no. Go ahead, Mark. We're not done. Go ahead.
Yep. No, that's what I just think that to me was one of the really more interesting things. I think I did a story about their whole LTFI thing coming from the Fiesta Bowl, just their newest 1-0 that kind of went viral. And for the player, that's more of a fan thing. It's interesting because that was one of the points the players made is like that we do that already.
Yeah.
Like we lock in already. We see James that way already. And it's been really good for fans to see him that way. That was one of the curious things to me. But Sal Wormley, so when they arrived, I guess whatever date it was, I think the 28th, maybe, when they arrived in Phoenix, it was just like they were there they had a couple hours, team meeting, dinner, bed. Yeah. It was not bowl trip. So they're really getting the full treatment, I think, of the concept of not just even now road game, but playoff road game, and how that is just a completely different animal and concept than bowl trip.
You're the best, my man. Thank you so much, Mark. It was great to see you out there. Yeah. Looking forward to Miami. Yep, see you in Miami. Thanks.
Thanks.
Mark Woganrich, half hour brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummels Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com, here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.